you want wooden worktops in your kitchen but don't want to shell out all that money to buy them, I'll show you how to make them at home for a fraction of the price. So first thing we've got to do is I'll show you the tools and all the equipment we're going to need to get this job done. Right, so first things first is the timber we're going to be using. I bought some 4x2 timbers, dry graded from local wicks, nice and cheap, nice and thick, and this is generally used for internal stud work, but for this case, perfect for a countertop. First item to add to the list would be the hammer. You need a pencil, tape measure, you've got an impact driver, a combi drill, a hammer drill. Now you can do all of this with just the combi drill because it does all of this in one, but I like to use these specific ones because it makes life a little bit easier. You get the hammer on the hammer drill is a bit more powerful than a combi drill, and the impact driver helps you drive those screws in a bit better than a combi drill would. You're going to need Phillips head or cross head for the screws. You're going to need a masonry drill bit, the same size, your rule plugs. You're going to need some rule plugs. But generally when you buy the rule plugs, it'll tell you what size drill bit you need. Also going to need some fixing blocks to fix the worktop, countertop to your units underside. These, nice and cheap, 100 of them for about £10. You need some long screws. Now with these screws, it depends on what size timbers you're using. These are 100mm thick, so I've got some 140mm screws. So these can go straight through the first piece of timber and into the second piece, keep it nice and sturdy together. So we've got 2 boxes of them. Gonna need a saw, 4-foot level, also some decent wood glue. I use Gorilla Glue. This stuff sticks like nobody's business. Gorilla Glue, top bananas. In addition to the long screws, a selection of all sorts of screws, because as we go along I'm not exactly sure what size screws we're going to need, but I'll let you know when we get there. Right, in this kitchen what I'm going to do is I'm going to be having one worktop on this side and we're having another worktop on that side. So what I'll do is I'll show you how to make it on this side, explain everything as we go through, and on this side I'll just time lapse it so you get to see the finished product in 2 different ways. Me showing you how to do it and just a quick peek. First thing we need to do is I've set all the bits of timbers out how I like. I'll put one at the back with a bit of an upstand on it, and on this end I'm going to have a little bit of a breakfast bar. So I'm going to come out 300 from this unit, it's about here, and then I'm going to cut it straight away down there. On this side I'm just going to tape it through and stick them straight in. Get the tape measure out, get the pencil out, get the saw out, mark them up, take them outside and cut them. So once you've got them all cut and shaped to how you want them, and you've set them on top of your units to make sure that they fit at the right size, that everything's good, once you're happy with that, take them all off apart from the upstand. If you're not doing an upstand, you can do exactly the same step, but just imagine the upstand is in a flat position. It's exactly the same. So take them all off, except for the first one against the wall. So now you've done that, we need to mark out and fix this to the wall. So what I'd like to do is I like to put fixings in about every 600mm, so that would be about every 2 foot. Have one at the start, come in about 100mm, which is about 4 inches. 100mm from one end as well as the other end, and that works out about right. From doing this, you have to pay very careful attention to any electrical sockets. Now there's a wire here that's coming from this socket. Imagine that the cables are going from the floor. They're probably not from the floor, they come down from the ceiling, but I like to imagine, just in case some people do it from the floor, have a line going all the way up, and that is a no drill zone. Do not drill anywhere near that because the cables are likely to be coming up from the top or from the bottom. Now to be extra safe, get yourself a wire detector so you can just put it across, you run it along where you want to drill. If it beeps, you don't drill, you find out exactly where your wires are. But in this case, this is the only one that I know of, and it goes straight down, and then as you can see, it's coming straight out of the bottom and down here. So I'm assuming it's going to be at a funny angle, so I'm doing one hole over here and another hole all the way over here, so I missed that by quite a lot. Right, so now we've marked out these holes, ready to go every 600, making sure we're out of the way of any electrical cables. We've got our wall plugs ready to go, we've got our masonry drill bit ready to go, we've also got our hammer drill ready to go. But before you drill any holes in here, I'd suggest using a combi drill and a wood drill bit on the end to go through every hole, just enough through so it marks the wall at the back. You do that for every hole, and then we'll take this piece of timber off, put the masonry drill bit in, the hammer drill. If you're using just a combi drill, you can just do all this with a combi drill, just swap the drill bit out as you go. So then once you've drilled the holes through the wall, we'll come back to you and show you what to do next. So yeah, make sure you drill the holes so that the worktop is actually going to cover them. That little cross is there, it's fine, I can rub that off. So once you've drilled your holes, take your timber away and you should see you've got these little marks here and here. You take this just out of the way, get your hammer drill or your combi drill and swap over to your masonry drill bit. It's the size for your wall plugs, and drill your holes. So once these holes are done, the wall plugs are in, you can get your bit of timber, put it up against the wall, and you need some significantly long enough screws to go all the way through this piece of timber and the whole depth of the wall plug, so you get a good solid hold on the wall. So I'm using 100mm screws, 50mm timber, and then these are about 50mm as well, about 60mm, so that should go in plenty the whole way through, and that should pull that in nicely. So just go ahead and pop those screws in. Make sure they recess a bit so they don't protrude against the timbers that we're going to put in for the actual worktop. And that holds that on nicely. So once you're all set here with this nice firmly attached to the wall, that ain't going anywhere. You're going to need, if you're having an impact driver, you want an impact driver. You're also going to need a wood drill bit in your combi drill. You're going to need your wood glue, and also you're going to need your long screws. So I'll put them all down here for the moment, and then all you do, make sure that fits in right. This is all going to get sanded in a minute, so we're not too worried about any rough edges at the moment. From here, get your wood drill bit. Now, you have to have a bit of forethought here, because I'm going to be having a hob in here. I'll screw the bits of timber together with these long screws. I'm going to be screwing these straight through here. So I don't want any screws where the hob's going to go, because I'm going to cut that bit out afterwards. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to glue this section and make sure that I only screw a couple here and then through here underneath this unit here. So that when I come to cut that out, I'm not going to bust up my jigsaw on these screws. The first thing you need to do is drill some pilot holes where you want these screws to go. Once you've drilled the holes, make a little pencil mark, just so you know where those screws have gone, so when you do the next board back, you don't drill straight into the same screws. Once you've marked those out, take the side that's going to go against this upstand, get the Gorilla Glue and put a load of that along the edge. Once the glue's on, rest it just in front of where you want it to go and just start off your screws. Put them in the holes, ready to go. So once this is pushed up against, you just zip, drill them straight in. From there, just push it back. And when you drill these, screw these in, just lean down a fraction so that you're making sure that the timber is sat right up against your unit. And then drill them in. There we go, that's nice and solid now. All we need to do is just rinse and repeat that process all the way so we come out to where we want to be. As you're going along and fixing these pieces of timber, use the fixing blocks. Every couple, as you see here, they've got 2 holes in one side and 1 hole in the other side. So take your pick, whether you want. Like I've got 1 hole in the bottom and 2 in the top, so this one screws through and fixes to the worktop, and these 2 screw through and fix to the unit, so it connects it to the unit very nicely. So make sure you put those in, it just keeps everything nice and solid connected to the unit itself. And there we go, there's the basis for one worktop. Solid, it's right in there. These edges, just between the 2, I want to fill these with a bit of wood filler, and then before I go over it with the sander. You can sand this down with just sandpaper and a bit of wood, just wrap the sandpaper around the wood and go over it. It will take a lot longer, but if you don't have power tools, then it's not a problem. I would advise using a belt sander and an orbital sander because it gets the job done a lot quicker and a lot smoother. Because I'm going to be staining this a dark colour, I don't want to use the natural, because otherwise it shows up. When you stain it dark, the filler you use, it shows up a bit lighter. So I've gone for a darker colour, nice dark brown. I'm going to go with now, just run this over all these little, just tiny little gaps that there are. There's a little crack here. And I'm not too worried about this edge because I'm going to be tiling up here, and I'm also going to be tiling up here, so I'm not too fussed by the edges. But I just run a bit of fill around the bits that I feel need a little attention. And also I'm going to fill in these screw holes in the front. So I'm going to go through now and just quickly run a bit of this over with a knife and get ready to sand it. While I'm waiting for that to dry, I'll quickly set you guys up time lapse, and I'll just quickly whack this side in as well. I'll just cut it in, have the whole lot done, see what it looks like on this side. So I'll do the same thing over here. And I'll fill that as well. So when we come back, I'll sand the whole lot as well with you. So both the worktops are in and filled. I've left it overnight so that the filler goes off and all the glue I used to glue all these together is completely set. So now I need to spend a good hour and a half or so with the sanders. First sander I'm going to be using is the belt sander with a rough 80 grit sandpaper on it. I'm going to go over the whole thing plenty of times. First off, I'm going to be going against the grain in this direction, and then once I've done that on both sides, then I'll be going with the grain in this direction to get it nice and smooth, so any lumps, get them out, any humps and bumps, just get it nice and smooth throughout. And once I'm done with the belt sander, I'll come back and I'll go over it with an orbital sander on a finer 120 grain sandpaper, and then I'll go over it once last time with a 240 grain throughout the whole thing. So the whole thing will be nice and smooth and then ready for staining. Once you spend a good amount of time sanding the worktop down, like I spent about 2 hours sanding this down. So I went over to start with the belt sander with 80 grit paper, and then I went over it again with 120 grit paper. And once I'd done that, I used the orbital sander, and then I went over it with 120 grit on top of this, and then 240 grit. So you go from the rougher, just to get it nice and smooth and any lumps and bumps cut out of it essentially, then you slowly work your way down and then use the orbital sander just to get a nice finish on it. And it, I don't know if you can see on the camera, but it is nice and smooth. It is buttery smooth. No lumps in it whatsoever. So now, once you've done that, finish the sanding, you get your hoover, and just hoover off all of the sawdust. And then once you've done that, just to get those last fine little bits of sawdust off, you get a wet cloth, and just a damp cloth, sorry, not a wet cloth, and just go over it and get those last little bits of dust up off there, and then we'll get on with the staining. Well, once you've sanded and wiped down your countertops, your worktops, then you're good to go. Before this stage, I would suggest just going over and checking that you're happy with how the worktop has come out. It's sanded well enough, because if there are any imperfections in the wood, they'll show through when you stain it. If you want it really smooth, I'd suggest at this stage you just go over, look at it look at it as I did from here, with a bit of light so you can see any reflections, any shadows of any little scuffs. And if you do want it perfect, then go over it again with a finer sandpaper and just keep going over until it's as smooth as you like. So in my case, we're ready for staining. So I'm going to set you guys up, go ahead, put a bit of stain on this. So I'm using Colron Refined Danish Oil, and it is in a Jacobin Dark Oak. So I'm looking to have a nice, real dark, rich finish, so I'll probably use 2, maybe even 3 coats of this stuff. And all you do is you pour it on and get a cloth and just wipe it in. You can use a paintbrush, but I don't want any brush strokes in it. I just want the colour of the wood to come through. When you do this, you want to use a lint-free cloth to rub this in so you don't get any bits on it. And also, according to the box, the tin, it says better off rubbing the oil with the grain, so left to right for me. So I'll be rubbing it this way. Just pour a bit on and rub it in. And then we have the worktop after 1 coat of the oil. It's not as dark as I was wanting to, so obviously this is just 1 coat. So I'm going to be doing 2, possibly 3 coats on this to see if I can get it as dark as possible. So what I'll do is I'll do that and come back to you guys.